an over-the-knee spanking. OTK, the ultimate spanking position, the classic of all classics. And seemingly the simplest, right? There's a lap, you go over it. But turns out that as with so many things in life, even the seemingly simplest of positions can actually be quite complex. Whether it's furniture to leg position, an OTK spanking can range from the ultimate in intimacy, relaxation, and comfort to a fierce, precarious punishment before the swats even start to fall. So, to help you get the most out of your time over a knee, I'm going to be going through the 3 most common OTK variations, as well as my 3 pro tips for you to remember along the way. I'm Princess Kelley, and this is Spanking University's Positions 101, Over the Knee. Let's start with a really common variation, one you'll find at hotels, parties, homes, OTK, on a bed. For so many of us, beds were the first place we got spanked as an adult. Meeting play partners at a hotel room, parties, or even just playing in someone's bedroom. Beds are often the item of furniture we're trying to make work. And unfortunately, for over-the-knee spankings, beds can be the trickiest. Doesn't mean you can't make it work. You just need to remember that the key is about the height of the bed versus the height of the people playing. If you're dealing with a really low to the ground bed and the top is tall enough, you might find you can make yourself a makeshift chair. Or if you're a bit shorter or the bed a bit taller, you can perch and drape the bottom across one knee for what is one of my absolute favorite positions as both top and bottom. Just be warned not to perch too much or the bottom may feel like they're sliding off. So what do you do if you want to lay the bottom out or it turns out the bed is too tall for you to perch on the edge? Easiest solution? The headboard. You'll often see people scooch back across at the end of the headboard, sitting up a little straighter than I am, legs out straight so the bottom can go across this way and they can relax completely across the bed. It's a pretty good solution, but I'm not gonna lie, I hate this position. As a top, it's murder on my knees, and there's something about it that just doesn't feel quite right. But it does work for many people, so I would still recommend it. But the other thing that I would recommend is trying to make the foot of the bed work for you. I do this by propping my feet up with either the bed runner or some sort of box, just enough that my knees become a right angle and the bottom can lay out comfortably. It's all about making the space work for you, which leads me to my first pro tip. Laps are not one size fits all. Make room. Look, I'm not that tall, and my lap is not a very big space to fit in. What length of my leg there actually is, a lot of it's taken up by my tummy. So the fact of the matter is there are very few grown adults that are going to comfortably fit across this lap. My solution? One leg. When I'm topping OTK, I almost always do it over one leg instead of 2. By doing this, I've increased the length because from here to here is longer than just here to here. And by moving it over to the side, I've kind of given myself a bit of room, kept my stomach out of the way, and opened up a greater space for them to fit. I've also given myself a good leverage, a better angle, and a really convenient way to do a leg lock. I also find that as a bottom, it's my preferred position comfort-wise. As I said, I've got a bit of a tummy, and I'm also just on the larger size, and I hate the feeling of like I'm sliding off someone's lap. So I'd much rather that the top made extra room for me to fit. Not only does it create that extra room, but it also allows me to take the pressure off my stomach by allowing me to transfer that weight to my hips. The key is bending at your hip crease rather than from your waist. It keeps your bum high in the air and keeps your weight off of your stomach. Make a position work for you. Change the position, not your body. Just because something doesn't look exactly like it did in the photo or the video that you saw, doesn't make it wrong. In fact, if it fits your body better, it's probably the better position. Last thing I'll say about beds is that while we all know that beds come in various sizes, you might not know that they do come in various heights. So for example, our guest bed is a platform bed, which means it doesn't have a box spring. It's the lowest to the ground, which works out well because that's the room that I top in. Our bed has a half-size box spring because it's where I get spanked and he's a bit taller. They are, I believe, the most versatile size and the ones I would recommend for most people. And a full-size box spring can work really well for somebody that's tall and prefers to work laying out flat rather than trying to use their bed for OTK. Just something to think about. But for now, Let's head downstairs so that we can move on to the original, the traditional, the one you came here for today, the straight back armless chair. We may have a few of these in our house. It's the classic, the one we all grew up loving, but it's actually kind of really uncomfortable. But it's so good. But seriously though, it's really uncomfortable. So what are you supposed to do? Well, that brings me to my pro tip number 2, balancing headspace, predicament, and comfort. A position is a huge part of the headspace of any scene, from the pulling out of the chair into the middle of the room, the feeling of being pulled over, to the vulnerability of being across someone's knee. It can all add to the emotion behind the scene. And OTK, even more than most, can allow for variations that highlight headspace and predicament. For example, leg and arm locking someone can make the bottom feel completely helpless. Making someone keep their hands and feet firmly on the floor can feel like a terrible predicament when all they want to do is struggle. Or by contrast, lifting their back feet up off the ground so they can't touch the floor can make a bottom feel small and vulnerable. By the way, the easiest way to do that is for the top to spread their legs or to tip the bottom physically forward. A quick safety note here, if you're going to be using the tipping forward method, be careful of what chair you're in and how much the bottom fights, or you could find yourself toppling over. Another neat trick to help heighten the feeling of helplessness when perhaps you can't tip someone forward to get their legs up off the ground is for the top to use their foot to lift the bottom's feet off the ground. You essentially place your foot in a way that the bottom's feet are just resting on top of it, which makes it feel like they're off the ground. This works best if the top has long legs or is much taller than the bottom. Otherwise, the top will often have to end up holding their leg out, which is difficult to hold in the long term. But it can be a quick and easy trick to get into someone's head, even if just for a moment, especially if chairs aren't an option. And then there's my personal favorite headspace trick as a bottom. Being held securely around the waist while over a knee can really make a bottom feel safe and cared for. It can also work well for more laid out OTK positions to help keep a bottom in place without needing to trap their limbs. All of these are great examples of ways you can use the OTK position to heighten the headspace of a scene. But particularly when it comes to straight back chairs, where the predicament is most acute, this is all happening while the bottom is in a physical position that isn't exactly natural for the body to be in and can be incredibly uncomfortable. OTK in a straight back chair is, for the vast majority of people I've encountered, quite uncomfortable. And that discomfort level can range from mildly annoying to physically painful. So, how do you know if your position is headspacey or just irritating? Overall, I say a good rule of thumb is to ask yourself, what is the bottom thinking about in this position? If the answer is that they're feeling helpless or small or vulnerable because their feet can't touch the floor, or like they're being punished because they have to stay in position, or that they're just thinking about nothing except how the spanking feels, that's great. That's almost certainly what you're going for. But if the answer is that they can't stop thinking about how they might fall off your lap, or they wish they weren't wearing socks because their feet just keep slipping, or that they can't breathe properly, or that they're dizzy, or their stomach hurts, or you get the point. That's probably not what you're going for. It's all about finding the right balance. Some tips you can use are to check in with your bottom frequently, or to plan your scene so that you're doing the uncomfortable bit at the beginning to establish that headspace, but then you move out of it to a more comfortable position once you've kind of gotten going. As a top, it's always something you want to be keeping in mind. Positions are powerful headspace tools, but just make sure your position is adding to your scene, not taking away. Last point about chairs, just like beds, they come in different heights, and that can make a big difference in terms of the comfort for the top. And while spanking someone in a wheelie chair may be really fun for bratty bottoms, let's just say that for safety reasons, I cannot advise. Okay, lastly, let's talk about sofas, or as I like to call them, the most underrated Spanko furniture item. A good sofa can give you everything you need in terms of positions, but for today I'm just going to talk about the OTK ones. The main thing that makes a sofa such a great option for OTK is that sofas are, by design, made to fit multiple people sitting on them at the same time on the edge. And it doesn't really matter if one of those people happens to be lying on top of the other one. Structurally, the sofa's still fine. Sofas are also the most accommodating furniture item in terms of size differences between top and bottom. I've had so many male bottoms tell me that they really want to do OTK, but they think they can't because they're worried that they're too big and that they'll squish me. But there's no need for that worry on a sofa. For the comfiest position around, the top can sit back in the middle of the sofa and the bottom can lay themselves out flat. If you're on a shorter sofa or more of a love seat situation, you might need to bend your knees and prop your feet up. Note, doing your legs and feet like this is way more comfortable than scooting to the other edge and resting your chin on the opposite armrest. Overall, this laid out flat position is quite comfortable and accommodating for both the top and the bottom. Even if the bottom is substantially larger than the top, the sofa is taking all of the weight of both parties, so the bottom can relax fully down without having to worry that they're squishing at the top. Similarly, if you want to go for a more traditional Spanko route, you can go for the half on, half off position. This works really well for shorter sofas or love seats, as well as in situations where the top isn't able to get a good angle or leverage point from the fully laid out position, which I often find can happen if there's a really big size difference between the top and bottom. So here, you want the bottom to be putting a lot of their weight on the sofa and the rest is on the top slap and on the floor. They shouldn't need to hold themselves up. And again, the sofa is doing a lot of the work, which allows even a very small top to accommodate a taller or larger bottom. It can be done over 2 knees or over 1 and is, in my opinion, the most universally comfortable and accessible OTK position, and it is the one that I would most highly recommend. Which brings me to my last pro tip: accommodate for health and safety. Adjusting positions isn't just about finding something that works for the top and bottom in terms of their size and the vibe of the scene. It's also about health and safety and physical limitations sometimes. Whenever I'm playing with someone new, I always make sure to ask about any current or previous injuries to their neck, back, and shoulders. These sorts of injuries can lead to lots of problems and pain when you're specifically dealing with OTK positions where the torso isn't supported. If someone does have any of those issues, I would not recommend putting them in a position where their torso isn't supported OTK. Those sorts of positions can lead to a lot of physical strain, either from the work of having to keep yourself supported up or from the pull of dangling there. But if you're really eager to have that experience of the chair put in the middle of the room, but you do have back, neck, or shoulder problems, there is a workaround. What I would recommend is using 2 chairs, putting a second chair next to the first one, where the bottom can then easily rest their weight and support their torso. It's a small change, but it can make a really big difference in terms of the comfort and safety of the bottom, as well as how long they're able to hold the position. Last couple of points I'll make about sofas. If you find yourself sinking into a particularly deep or smushy sofa, you know the type. Put some pillows underneath yourself, under your bum to prop yourself up. Ideally, the top slap should be at a right angle, just like you're in a chair. Just as a bed can be too high, a sofa can be too low. Alternatively, you can scoot yourself forward to the edge of the sofa as a way to deal with the well-loved sofa you just can't help but sink into, or as a way to make your own makeshift chair without needing to worry about the chair toppling over. So that's it. Hopefully this has been a helpful and/or enjoyable discussion. If you did enjoy this, I would love it if you'd give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This channel is going to be able to exist from the help of patrons on Patreon, so if you are able to financially support the work we're doing here, you'll find the link to do so in the description box below. So, until next time, class dismissed.